Welcome once again to another episode of the Let's Be Frank podcast. In this episode we speak to Zoe Sole, our Social Prescribing Project Worker. So Zoe, and we'll get to know you during the course of this podcast. Obviously I've met you before, but for the listening millions, we're going to do a little quick fire quiz. So some quick fire questions and some that might actually need you to give a bit of thought to, but we'll get straight into it now. Are you ready, Zoe?
I am.
Okay. Favourite sandwich?
Cheese.
Cheese?
Cheese.
Favourite pizza?
Oh, pineapple and jalapeno.
What one thing do you own that you should probably throw out?
Probably too many clothes.
What is the scariest animal in the world?
Honey badger.
Good answer. Apples or oranges?
Apples.
Tea or coffee?
Tea. Green tea.
Crisps or cake?
Probably cake.
Cats or dogs?
Oh, probably dogs.
Have you ever asked someone for their autograph?
Yes.
Who was it and what did they say?
I went to go see Kerry Ellis in her closing night doing Wicked, and I got her and Brian May's autograph there, and that's the one I remember.
Brilliant. Have you ever asked anyone out on a date and they said no?
No, I don't think so.
What do you think happens when we die?
We go into the ground and we become one with the universe.
What do you hope happens when we die?
Exactly the same thing.
What's your earliest memory?
Probably being in the garden. Like being out in nature.
What were you doing in the garden in this memory? Dare we ask? Eating worms?
Probably,
poking
yeah.
badgers?
Probably playing in the mud. Dressing up as a fairy. I did love fairies and anything related to kind of fairy tales when I was younger. So probably that. I spent a lot of time at my grandparents in their garden. Good memories. Oh, and frogs. I always used to love grabbing frogs and, tadpoles and things like that.
Of course. Window seat or aisle seat?
Window seat.
Favourite taste?
Ooh. Chocolate.
Favourite smell?
Ooh. Probably roses, something like that.
Favourite sound?
Favourite sound? Ooh. I always remember growing up that when my mum came to pick me up, I could decipher the jingle of her keys compared to all the other parents. So I'd say that might be a favourite sound.
Favourite word to pronunciate?
Deoxyribonucleic acid.
Easy for you to say. What is the most used app on your phone other than social media?
Other than social media? Probably my calendar. If I don't put stuff in my calendar, it doesn't happen.
If you could go back in time and change one thing, what would it be? In history and in your personal life?
Oh, wow. I don't know, because I feel like if I change things, they might be worse than they are now, and I wouldn't want to mess that up. I don't know is the answer to that. I'd leave it as it is.
What 3 pieces of advice would you give a 20-year-old Zoe?
A 20-year-old Zoe? Blimey. Probably believe in yourself a bit more, because you'll be fine. Stay positive. I know that sounds really cheesy and cliche. Another piece of advice I'd give 20-year-old Zoe: keep dancing and keep doing things that you enjoy, because you'll underestimate how important they are.
Do you think the 20-year-old you would respect the person you've become today?
I hope so.
What one thing did you enjoy doing most as a child that you no longer do?
That's a difficult one. Probably spending time with my grandparents, because they're not around anymore, and I spent a lot of time at their house. But I like to think that I probably do a lot of the things I did as a child now, so things like dancing and being creative, and pretty much just playing about. I still try and do those things.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you regret agreeing to do this quiz?
I don't know yet. You'll have to ask me again at the end.
What phrase or saying would you use on your headstone to best summarise your life?
Orange.
Which one question and answer would you delete from today's session if you had the chance?
Can't even remember all the questions, but probably the 3 pieces of advice, because I reckon if I thought about that more, I'd have a much more prophetic answer for you.
For those people that don't know what a social prescriber does, would you like to explain a little bit about what the role entails and your background and how you came into the job?
It's a big question. There's
a big question.
There's a lot of stuff.
Let's hope we get a big answer as well.
So I'll start off with perhaps how I got to where I am now. So I did my undergraduate degree in psychology, and whilst I was studying psychology, I went to a guest lecture, a gentleman called Dr. Peter Lovett, and he gave a lecture about dance psychology, which were two things that I've been very passionate about. I've always danced. I always say as soon as I started walking, I started dancing, and these two kind of things came together. After I graduated, I then started my work in mental health, and I worked for a mental health charity for 5 years, during which I also started my master's in neuroaesthetics, which in short is to do with art and psychology. And during that time, I also learned a little bit more about what social prescribing is and how that fits into the kind of link between art and psychology.
I think you mentioned to me the other day that you didn't know at the time, but as part of your thesis, was it for your master's or for your original degree, it was on social prescribing, and little did you know that here you'd be.
Here I'd be today, yeah. So my master's thesis was using, I did a large-scale study using dance to alleviate symptoms of generalised anxiety disorder. And as I was writing up my discussion for my thesis, I was writing about social prescribing and how doing lots of different things, not just dancing, but engaging with arts and culture is beneficial for our general health and well-being, without really thinking that I'd be a social prescriber. But lo and behold, a couple of months later, here I am as a social prescriber.
I think Carl Sager that said, if you try explaining something to someone as if they're a 6-year-old, and if you can't explain it, you don't understand your subject. So the $1 million question, what is social prescribing?
And are you a 6-year-old?
And are you a 6-year-old listening? All the non-6-year-olds, if you'd like to switch off.
So I think, in short, social prescribing is helping people to be healthier, and that is a very broad spectrum. So one of the ways that social prescribing came about is that a huge amount of GP appointments are for non-medical reasons, and that might include things like mental health, loneliness and isolation, people struggling with things like their housing, benefits, finances, all of those things that impact our general health and well-being and can impact our physical health. So the NHS implemented a social prescribing model, and the idea was that some of these people that were going to the GP could be referred onto a social prescriber, and they could help with some of those other things that impact their general health and well-being but weren't to do with their physical health. And so that's where I come in at the Oasis Partnership. So I'm a non-NHS funded social prescriber, so I'm funded by the Rothschild Foundation, who have made this role possible in helping people perhaps engage with activities. So we have an absolute wealth of activities and groups and things going on at the Bagnall Project here. So whether that's doing yoga and mindfulness, whether it's going for a walk, circuit training, whether it's learning to podcast, free guitar lessons, these kinds of things which can actually help our health and well-being, or it might be finding additional support, as I said, whether that might be housing, benefits, finances, and really just helping people in the local community.
Who is it that can be referred to us then? Who is it available to?
So anyone in the local community can self-refer to myself as a social prescriber. So it is for people over the age of 18, and it can include those things, or is potentially beneficial for people that are experiencing loneliness and isolation, any kind of potential struggles with their mental health. It may also be for people that also have physical difficulties, but really anyone in the community. And it might just be for those people that want to know a little bit more about what's going on in their local community and find out how they can get involved.
Is it restricted to any particular areas at all?
So we're predominantly covering the Chesham and Chiltern areas, places such as Amersham, Missenden, Gerrards Cross, Beaconsfield and the Chalfonts.
Yeah. You mentioned there's a self-referral process, so how do people sign up? Do they just go to the website, or can they contact you directly?
Yeah, so people can go onto our website and they can find either the social prescribing page or the get in touch button on the Oasis Partnership website, and you just fill out a short referral form. You don't need to give any reason as to why you're being referred, so it's more general information such as your name, address, telephone number, those kinds of things, after which I'll get in contact with you and we'll arrange a time and a day to have a bit more of a chat to see, how we can help moving forward.
So what type of support is offered when they first contact you? What kind of things will you look to do with them?
So it depends, what someone's particular circumstances are. So as I said, it might be that someone wants to get involved in groups and activities, and that might be some of the things that we're offering here at the Bagnall Project, but it might also be other things that are going on in the community. So if you're particularly interested in woodwork, for instance. We might look at Men in Sheds, or we might look at some other local organisations that are offering that kind of service, or gardening. We might look at Lindengate or the Healthy Living Centre, or looking at local allotments. So really I can be very flexible in this role, as well as any other kind of practical support that we can signpost you to. For instance, if you are struggling with your finances, that might be Christians Against Poverty, it might be CAB. There are other things that we can look at kind of with that more practical support as well.
So you have to have your finger on the pulse in the local community. You have to stay one step ahead of the game, do you?
Indeed. So part of my role so far has been getting to know local organisations, some of which I was already aware of with my previous work in another charity organisation, and also being Cheshire born and bred, I was already familiar, having been local to the area.
Oh, excellent. So what are your hopes for the project and how it will best help people?
So I think just helping people, I think re-engaging with our community post-COVID especially. There are new groups that have formed, or old groups that have maybe reformed and changed, so helping people really integrate with their local community. I think there were some fantastic instances over COVID of people getting involved with their local community, albeit perhaps not in person, being able to help one another, whether that was volunteering or, things on Zoom, stuff like that. So helping people get involved with their local community, and just generally helping people's health and well-being, as well as getting people into the Bagnall project and seeing what wonderful things that we have to offer here.
One of our aims is to reduce loneliness and social isolation, and that's quite pertinent this week because it's actually Loneliness Awareness Week. So can you think of any moments when you've felt most lonely, and what kind of tools did you use, Zoe, to make you feel less lonely?
I think, like anyone over COVID, there were certainly times where I felt very lonely, and I feel like it was those times where I was on a call with lots of people, and then that call ended, and then you're just on your own afterwards. And I certainly remember there was a time where I was on like a group WhatsApp call with some of my girlfriends, and the call finished and I just burst into tears because it just felt so strange that, we weren't there in person. It was still very difficult. And I feel for myself especially, I have to try and be proactive and reaching out to other people as well. And even if it's just having something in your diary, once a month and something like that, and making sure that we do touch base with people, and that, we're proactive in doing that, really.
Someone asked me the same question the other day when we were talking about Loneliness Week, and I think when that first 3-week lockdown was announced, that was probably the moment I felt most loneliness. And it would have been the same for a lot of people. And we were seeing sort of the tail end of all the issues that lockdown caused at the moment, aren't we? So that's just one of the areas which the Social Prescribing Project can look to help with, isn't it?
Definitely. And I saw on the Mental Health Foundation, they're doing some awareness around men's mental health at the moment as well, which I think is really important in terms of kind of reducing some of the stigma and kind of stereotypes around men opening up about their mental health as well, and how important it is to see, other men opening up and reaching out and supporting one another as well. It's not just, doesn't just have to be, a female endeavour, and having worked in mental health is also very female dominated. So it's very refreshing moving forward to see more men using services, more men kind of openly talking about their mental health and social isolation, and mental health issues. It has no prejudice. It can affect anyone at any time.
So for anyone that wants to get in contact with Zoe, our website is www.oasispartnership.org.
Please feel free to contact me. So you can drop me an email. So that is zoe.sole, so that's zoe.sole @oasispartnership.org. You can also give me a call or drop me a text message on 07563 394 180. And of course, anyone is always welcome to drop by the Bagnall project. I'm here based in Chesham all week, but please do pop by and I'd be happy to have a chat with anyone.
Also, we have a weekly group, don't we, that people can come and get a teaser of what we're all about on a sort of an informal basis. If you'd like to tell the listeners a bit more about that then, Zoe.
Yeah, of course. So we have a very aptly named Bagnall Brew and Biscuits. I don't know whether some of our listeners might be aware of the 4Bs that Chesham is known for. So we're kind of playing off of that with the Bagnall Brew and Biscuits, and that's our community cafe, which is open on a Wednesday between 12 and 2 every week. You can drop by the Bagnall and you can come get a cup of tea, have a chat, and we're always happy to show people around the building and kind of have a chat with you about any help and support that we might be able to provide.
We're in Waterside in Chesham, so if anyone's passing or around on a Wednesday, just pop in to see us between 12 and 2. You can meet me, you can meet Zoe, you can meet lots of the people that you've heard me talk to on these podcasts. Most of us are in and around the building on those days. You can actually find our latest timetable on our website, which is www.oasispartnership.org, and there's a tab on the top there which says Bagnall Project. So if you click on that tab, the first thing you'll see is a poster sort of summarising everything that we offer, and then our timetables underneath that is kind of split into day order. So it tells you what schemes and services and classes that we do day by day, what times they are. Most of our classes are free or highly subsidised, so it tells you on there which ones are free and how much, if anything, you're going to have to pay for some of the other classes.
It does, and as you said, so the majority of our groups and activities are free, and anything that you do have to pay for is generally under a tenner. Most of them run from the Bagnall Project along Waterside, but we do have another premises in Chesham Town Centre, Lewins Yard, which is where we run our craft workshops from.
So we are looking to launch a regular feature on the podcast called 3 for Freedom. 3 for Freedom, I hear you say, Zoe.
Yes.
Not at all prompted. So the concept is that you need to choose a book, a movie, an artist, maybe a singer or a band that has inspired you during the following periods of your life. Childhood, as a moody yet impeccably cool teenager, as I'm sure you were, and as an adult. So if you can pick a book, a movie, and an artist or a band which inspired you during those 3 periods of your life. So we'll start with your childhood, Zoe.
Yep.
What's your book going to be? What book did you enjoy when you were a young weakling?
So it wasn't a particular book, but I remember I was really obsessed with dragons at one point, and I used to have the choose your own ending books. Do you remember those?
Yeah.
I'm sure they've got a catchier term than that. And you would read through them and then you decide what the next kind of point is going to be. So I remember really enjoying those when I was growing up. And as I said before, like anything related to fairy tales, so like folklore and stuff like that, I really enjoyed. So that would probably be a kind of general book.
Fair enough. Yeah, they were good books. They were. They did Star Wars ones. I remember the Star Wars where you could choose your own ending, couldn't you? Like which path to take. And sliding doors moments, weren't they, throughout the book?
Yeah.
And what movie did you like as a child?
So I definitely know this one because we mentioned it the other day as well. I was obsessed with The Labyrinth. With David Bowie, know all the songs. I remember doing dance competitions and dancing to songs from The Labyrinth. I know all the words, and even as an adult, most Christmas and birthday I'll get something Labyrinth themed. So definitely very obsessed with The Labyrinth.
No, we discussed this the other day. Can you remember the name of the dog and the little creature that used to sit on the dog?
So Sir Lancelot was it not?
No.
Yes, it was.
It wasn't. The dog was called...
I can't remember now.
Think of rice pudding. Ambrosia.
Ambrosia,
yeah. And the little creature that sat on him was called Lord Didymus.
Lord Didymus.
Yeah.
We used to have a hamster called Hoggle and everything.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. What happened to Hoggle? What was his fate? How did he pass?
The hamster?
Yeah.
I can't remember. It was tragic, I'm sure.
It was tragic.
As most hamsters' deaths are.
As a child, who was your favourite singer, sort of artist, band, soloist, anyone?
So I was also, as a child, still very much now obsessed with musical theatre, and I particularly liked a musical called Barnum, which had Michael Crawford in it. So that was a circus musical, and very seriously wanted to run away with a circus at various times in my life, and I'm sure that will probably happen again. I'd probably say Barnum, the musical, and Michael Crawford is probably what I was...
Is that what inspired you to... Because Zoe actually does classes in circus skills. Is that what inspired you to...
Most probably. Planted the seed
skills?
Pretty early on. There is some fantastic dancing in it, and I went to go... So it was on in the West End when I was younger, and then... hadn't been for a long time, but for my 21st birthday they had it on. I can't remember who was playing the lead, but anyway, I went to go see it and it was absolutely phenomenal, like blubfest all over.
Blew your mind.
It did. It was amazing.
It would be remiss of me, and I'm sure people are shouting at their phones as they listen to this, that Michael Crawford was of course Frank Spencer on TV in the comedy programme Some Mothers Do Have 'Em. Everyone loved that show. So that leads us on to the next period of your life. So we're moving you forward, Zoe, to the time that you were a moody, yet impeccably cool teenager. What favourite book do you remember as a teenager? What were you obsessed by? What were you into?
Yeah. I'm trying to think. What would be best to choose?
Did you forget how to read by the time you got to your teenage years?
Yeah, I was too moody to be reading during my teenage
Reading wasn't cool.
Reading wasn't cool. I must say, I read Opening Skinner's Box, which I actually recommended to someone recently, and that was when I first started studying psychology at A-level, so probably my late teens. And it's a lot of the kind of pop psychology stuff, and it goes really into depth into some of the most well-known psychology studies, and that was very influential because that kind of was a really nice introduction into psychology, and a book that, as I said, we had someone here doing work experience recently, and that was one of the books that I recommended to him before he went off to university. So I'd say that had quite a lot of influence on me.
Absolutely, it piqued your interest and led to what you went on to do. So yeah, a book that most definitely inspired you. A movie from your teenage years. What were you when you were just starting to be cool and too cool for school and talking back to your mother? I'm sure you didn't, but what movie was it that inspired you?
I definitely got into a lot of horror and still love a lot of horror films, and I still remember like watching The Ring for the first time and being terrified. So I'd say probably the horror genre probably influenced me quite a lot, and probably my dress sense at one point, which was predominantly black with a lot of black eyeliner and perhaps looking like the girl from The Ring at some point as well. But so let's go with The Ring.
Okay, so what band or artist were you into when you were a cool, precocious teenager making your way in the world?
So I was most definitely into a lot of emo, screamo kind of genre, but also I spent a lot of time around the skate park. So there was two kind of perhaps conflicting at times musical interests. One band that I really loved at the time and that I really enjoyed to see blow up over time as well was Skindred, and I remember going and seeing them live, and I actually got in Kerrang magazine.
Did you?
So there was a photographer that we met on the way because we were lost trying to find directions, and turned out he was the photographer for the evening. And at the end of the gig we were walking out and he grabbed me and asked me some questions about the gig, and there was a very sweaty blonde picture of me in Kerrang, which I actually didn't realise till a friend of mine's sister kind of took a picture, or brought a copy to school or something like that and showed me, and I got a pic at that gig as well. So that always kind of stands in my mind. It was part of my interest.
Have you got it framed at home, that particular issue of Kerrang?
I don't think I ever had a copy. I think there's probably a picture of the copy somewhere that I took on probably a not very good phone at some point, but I still have the pic. I
was going to say, if any of the listeners have got any old copies of Kerrang lying around, what time period would it be? But I've actually just realised there that I've got hundreds of copies of Kerrang at home as well, so I might be able to try and dig that out. So the third dominant period of your life, I guess, now as an adult, is there a book that has inspired you recently?
Well, I think I've read a lot more widely and a lot more kind of like sociological themes, I guess. So a book that I read recently was Women Don't Owe You Pretty, which is very interesting, and a lot of kind of, I guess, feminist literature and things like that, which has been very interesting. But I also do like to indulge in things like Stephen King and, go back to the kind of horror roots, which kind of developed as a teenager as well. So, yeah.
As an adult, is there a particular movie which has grabbed you that you keep going back to, and you'd pass on to someone if you wanted them to be similarly inspired by what you took from that particular movie or film?
I'm going to take a moment to think about this, because there probably is, and I've gotten really into films over time, but trying to think of one off the top of my head is really hard.
If you went home tonight and you thought, I'm in a bad mood, I want to put a film that's going to cheer me up or make you cry or
it's really
make
bad.
you laugh.
I don't often watch films over and over again. Like, I'm often looking for new films.
Yeah.
I do love The Shining. I guess that's a film that I like going back to, and I like watching that over and over again. It's a great film.
Yeah, it's a great film.
But also, I will go back and watch The Labyrinth again and again and again. Like, that's like a comfort film as well. Did you ever watch The Brave Little Toaster?
No.
So that was a precursor to Toy Story, and that was another film that I remember having on video. Oh, actually, also, I've watched Hamilton an embarrassing amount of times, so I guess if I'm ever feeling down, I'd put Disney Plus on and watch Hamilton.
If I can make a recommendation here, so every time I meet anyone and we talk about films, I recommend a certain film, don't I? I don't know if Zoe can remember the certain film that I recommend to everyone, which I always say is the best film that's ever been made. So if anyone's out there looking to be touched emotionally, to make themselves laugh, to be struck by the loyalty of the animals in the film, Babe 2, Pig in the City.
I have heard this recommendation. I've not yet seen this
film.
How
can you not? Babe 2, Pig in the City, best film ever made.
Note taken.
Yep, watch that one. Is there an album or a band or an artist that inspires you as an adult you keep going back to when you maybe feel low or need picking up or need cheering up?
I'd say the older that I get, the more nostalgic I get about particular music. So definitely I like going back to kind of old emo albums that I used to listen to. I'd say a lot at the moment I'm listening to a lot of Coheed and Cambria, which was also a band that me and my boyfriend listened to a lot. And I remember him having the posters of Coheed on his bedroom wall when we first met. And they just feel very nostalgic, and that there are a lot of albums as well, and they're very, very good.
Have you any final messages for the listeners, Zoe, before we wrap up today?
I think just get in touch, even if you're just interested in what we're offering in terms of social prescribing or at the Bagnall. It really is open to anyone, and I'm always more than happy to have a chat with anyone who might be interested. I think from a personal perspective, my thing is very much getting involved in arts and crafts and culture and dancing and music and all that goodness. So if you can take some time today, whether that be listen to some music, have a dance around your kitchen, have a sing along, anything like that, because it will make you feel better.
Excellent. Thank you for your time today, Zoe, and I'm sure we'll speak to you again.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
The Let's Be Frank podcast is brought to you by the Oasis Partnership, a charity providing high-quality social and psychological support services to improve people's mental health and well-being. We deliver socially inclusive, open-access support for the wider communities of Buckinghamshire through pioneering and innovative partnerships and initiatives. Oasis provides free and subsidised health and wellbeing classes and support groups for the Chiltern area, including mindfulness, yoga, tai chi, reiki, fitness, boxing, art and music. Oasis also helps support people to reach their full potential through our substance misuse treatment service, Routes to Work and outreach service. The Oasis Substance Misuse Treatment Service is provided in partnership with Inclusion, part of Midlands Partnership NHS Foundation Trust, delivering one recovery bucks. The Let's Be Frank podcast was launched in tribute to the memory of long-term Oasis patron and world-renowned cinematographer Frank Hodge, and is recorded in the Frank Hodge Podcast Studio, our new community podcasting facility launched in his honour.